This is the second part of the series to financially analyze BlackBerry. Displayed on your screen is the classified balance sheet from BlackBerry from 2020 and 2021. All financial statements shown in this video are available for public viewing on their website at blackberry.com if you'd like to take a look for yourself. Let's break it down, keeping in mind that the currency is in US dollars in millions. Looking at the assets section of the balance sheet, the 5 most valuable assets of 2020 are outlined in blue. Goodwill, Note 4, at $1,437. Intangible assets, Net Note 4, at $915. Short-term investments, Note 3, at $532. Cash and cash equivalents, Note 3, at $377. And accounts receivable, net allowance of 10 and 9 respectively, Note 2 and 4, at $215. While the 5 most valuable assets of 2021 are outlined in purple, which have the same accounts as 2020 with different values. Goodwill at $849, intangible assets at $771, short-term investments at $525, cash and cash equivalents at $214, and accounts receivable at $182. Taking a look at the liability section of the balance sheet, the 3 largest liabilities of 2020 are outlined in green. Debentures, Note 7 at $606, deferred revenue, current Note 13 at $264, accrued liabilities, Note 4 at $202. While the largest liabilities of 2021 are outlined in pink. Long-term debentures, Note 7 at $720, deferred revenue, current at $225, accrued liabilities at $178. Next, we'll look at the income statement from BlackBerry from 2020 and 2021, keeping in mind that the currency is in US dollars in millions. As shown in the statement displayed, the 5 greatest expenses of 2020 are outlined in red. Selling, marketing, and administration at $493, research and development at $259, amortization at $194, impairment of goodwill, Note 3, at $22, and impairment of long-lived assets, Note 3, at $10. While the 5 greatest expenses of 2021 are outlined in orange. Impairment of goodwill at $594, selling, marketing, and administration at $344, research and development at $215, amortization at $182, and impairment of long-lived assets at $43. Scanning the income statement just above the operating expenses is the revenue. Although it only says Revenue Note 13, scrolling down to Note 13 we can identify the different revenues. In 2020, the sources of revenue were through software and services at $691, and licensing and others at $349, coming at a total revenue of $1,040 for 2020. In 2021, the sources of revenue were the same accounts, software and services at $621, and licensing and others at $272, coming at a total revenue of $893 for 2021. Now that we looked over the financial statements, let's get some calculations in. In 2020, the working capital was $75 million. This calculation can be done by taking the current assets and subtracting the current liabilities. The higher the capital, the likeliness the company will be able to pay its liabilities. The current ratio for 2020 is 1.07 to 1. This calculation can be done by dividing the current assets by the current liabilities. The higher the ratio, the better liquidity. Next is the asset test ratio. The asset test ratio for 2020 is 1.02 to 1. This calculation can be done by adding cash, short-term investments, and receivables together and dividing the total by the current liabilities. The higher the ratio, the better liquidity. Lastly, the profit margin for 2020 was negative 14.6%. This calculation was done by dividing profit by net sales. The higher the percentage, the more money per sale. For 2021, the working capital was $577 million. The current ratio was 2.34 to 1. The asset test ratio was 2.23 to 1. And the profit margin was negative 123.6%. Now that we've done the math, what does this information mean? With all the data collected, we can now analyze the state or progress of BlackBerry.